Hey there guys, welcome back. ARTFX Studios Tutorial Tuesday Season 2 about glitch hop. And today I want to show you one more bass sound that I want to use in this drop. It's a sound that I created last week, and it's gonna be in one of my newest releases, which is going to come up on a label really soon. Yeah, so for this sound, it's a high pitch kind of bass sound, but you can use it as something totally different than a bass. I mean, you can use it as a bass sound, you can use it as a laser sound, you can also use it as a downsweep kind of sound to use at the start of a breakdown, and you could even use it as a riser in your build-ups. I'm gonna make this one because I want to reuse it. I'm gonna use it a couple of times in the track, and it sounds something like this. To be quite honest, I actually like that last part of it, so I might actually resample that when, I come to finishing this track. So, that being said, I'm now going to dive in and construct this sound from the ground up. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of this entire thing, and I can see there's no automation at all right now. The sound itself is created in Native Instruments Massive. So, to begin with, let's load up Native Instruments Massive. Like that. The whole sound is really basic to create. So the first thing you always do is click File, New Sound, because you want to start with a blank preset and don't want to have some knobs turned to different positions. For the first oscillator, I'm basically just gonna stick to the square saw oscillator. I'm gonna leave all these knobs set to the position they are right now. And I'm going to connect LFO 5 to the pitch. And I'm gonna do the same for envelope 1. So, why am I doing this? Well, I'm gonna show you that in a minute. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm gonna bring the range for the LFO up to 12 semitones, and I'm gonna bring the range for the envelope down 12 semitones. So now we get some pitch modulation going on. But when I would play this right now, it's probably gonna sound really weird. See? It doesn't really sound like something we could use. Well, maybe it might be interesting, Sometimes these kind of things could just be useful in some sort of way. But that being said, we're now actually already done with the oscillators. This is everything for all the oscillators that we need. There are no filters in this whole patch. So we can now actually set up the LFO and the envelope. Let's go to LFO number 5. I'm going to bring the rate up all the way. I'm going to bring the amp down to about 1030. So it's going to be about there. And I'm going to drag the X-fade curve all the way up so it's a full sine wave. Now, I can play around a little bit with this, and I can, just shift it in a little bit. So we're basically offsetting the curve, and I'm gonna show you why I did that. The thing with this is that when you offset the curve so it's like this, you can actually also use this patch as a siren kind of sound when we're done with the final patch. I mean, right now it most likely won't sound like a siren. See? But when we set everything up in a way that so that we can control the rate and the amp, we could even make this or turn this into a siren kind of sound, which is really cool. You can create a lot of different effects with this particular patch. Now for this LFO, we need to set up some macro controls. So the first macro control I'm going to set up is macro number 2. And I'm going to drag that to the amp. And I'm gonna bring the range up so that it's... Well, this is too far because we're now starting to see that little block. And I'm gonna bring it down just below that. So now this macro number 2 controls the amount of pitch modulation that is being added to oscillator 1. And by turning up the macro knob number 2, we get more of that pitch oscillation going on, that pitch modulation. And when I play this sound, and let me mute the envelope for now, you can really hear what happens when I turn up this knob. We sort of get a little bit more grittier kind of sound, and it surely helps to automate this on long pitch bendings and stuff like that. Really helps to add some different character to the sound and to basically just modulate the sound over time. I'm going to rename this macro to LFO amp, and I'm gonna take macro knob number 3 and connect it to the rate. Now I'm also going to bring this down a lot. I don't know exactly to where, but I think this should be enough. Let's call this LFO rate, like that. And now we can actually start automating both of these settings instead of just one. And to show you what the rate does, I'm going to drag the LFO amp all the way up, and I'm going to play this now and, well, basically just increase the LFO rate. Now, if you look at this, you can see the range is going down. So when we turn this knob up, the actual speed of the LFO is going to slow down. Listen. And there we have our siren. Maybe drag it a little bit further to the right. See, we can turn this into a siren pretty easily. Now, let's turn the rate up all the way. Yeah, I kind of like that. It's pretty good. Turn the rate down all the way because we don't really want that for now. I'm also gonna drag the LFO amp down all the way. Let's go to envelope number 1. We don't want any attack, and I'm gonna bring the decay down a little bit so that it's, well, about 10 o'clock. So about there. And I'm gonna take the level down all the way, leave everything as it is, and I'm gonna unmute the envelope connected to the pitch. Now we have a range going down, so that means that since we have no attack, when the sound begins, this envelope will basically create a really fast pitch rising effect on the start of each note. So what you get is that each note will basically begin like a lasery kind of sound. If we bring up the decay, you can really hear what happens. Now we want this to be fast, to just give some more character to the start of the sound. Now for the effects section, effect slot number 1 is going to be a classic tube. Dry wet is going to be down to about 10 o'clock, and the drive is going to be at 12 o'clock, so we get... becomes a little bit louder, gives us a little bit more volume. Effect slot number 2 is going to be a dimension expander. The dry wet is going to be about 1030, so that might be about there. Let's see, and the size is gonna be down a lot. To about there. Gives a little bit more stereo width to the actual sound. Maybe bring down the dry wet a little bit further. Yeah, that sounds pretty good. The EQ, no low shelf. I'm gonna boost a little bit, so I'm gonna set this to about there. Leave the frequency as it is, and let's add in a little bit of high shelf. Now we're clipping slightly every now and then, so I'm gonna bring the master down just a tiny little bit. That sounds pretty good. Let's go to the feedback module right here. I'm gonna bring the feedback up a little bit, so it's gonna be about 930. Makes it sound a little bit fuller. I don't know, it just gives it a little bit more character, a little bit more body. There's not really that much low end in this sound, but that feedback does, well, give it some slightly more harmonics, and it really works to bring the level up a little bit more, you know, it really works. On insert number 1, I'm going to set this to a parabolic shaper, and I'm gonna take the dry wet down to about 11 o'clock, pointing at the D, and the drive is gonna go down as well, quite a lot. Don't need that much drive, just want to add a little bit more distortion. It's really subtle change, but it definitely helps to add in that little bit of extra distortion. That way the sounds will really be loud enough to, well, work with all the other sounds that we got. Let's go to the voicing tab. I'm gonna set the amount of voices to 2. I'm gonna set it to monophone, so we can only play one note at a time, and we could even bend between notes. And I'm also gonna set this to legato thriller. So now we have 2 voices, and that will basically increase the volume a little bit. And it makes it sound a little bit weird. Now, I'm also gonna turn on pan position with this knob set all the way to the left, and it will basically give us back the sound we had. But since we're now using 2 voices, they are gonna be, well, panned a lot to the sides, which gives us a really stereo kind of sound. It makes it much wider, and that really helps, you know. It really helps to make this sound punch through a mix, because it's so wide. Now let's go to the oscillator tab. On the oscillator tab, normally I would restart via gate. I use that a lot to keep the sounds punchy and make them work. But since we're only using 2 voices, that doesn't really do that much, so the sound doesn't really need it. What I'm going to do here is I'm gonna set the pitch bend range, and I'm gonna set it to a really drastic amount of pitch bending, because I want this patch to be able to be used in a build-up. I want to be able to use this in a breakdown. I want to be able to create a siren with this if I need to. I want to do a lot of interesting things. And so I'm going to set the range to 24 semitones up and 24 semitones down. Now note, that are 2 octaves. So 2 octaves up and 2 octaves down. So in total, we now get a pitch bend range of 48 semitones, which is 4 full octaves. Now that's a lot, and that means we can drop the pitch from, well, really high to really low in one note, and that's really cool. Now we're done with the actual sound. I could change the glide if I want. I don't know if I'm gonna use glides in this particular patch, but I want to be able to use this, so I'm going to set a short glide time and then connect macro knob number 4 to the time of the glide, so that I can basically control how long the glide is. Let's rename this to glide, and that leaves us with our final patch. This is the final thing. Let's close this down. Now I'm gonna add an EQ8, because I want to clean out some of the low end. You might think there's not really that much low end going on, right? Well, you'll be surprised. There's a lot of low end going on. And as you can see right here, I've got a pitch bend set up. It's a 48 semitone pitch bend with a little bit of a slope. You know, it's not going in a linear kind of way. It's sloping a little bit, which I've done by holding the Alt key on my keyboard and dragging this line up and down, like that. I'm gonna give it a slight slope so it's not fully linear. Makes it sound a little bit different, you know? So that pitch bend is now already taking shape. And it sounds pretty great. I really like the sound of this. Let's EQ this. I'm gonna set the first one to a high pass. You know, I'm really paying attention to that final part of the sound. I don't want to lose too much of those low frequencies on the end, because if I would do that, you know, when we play the sound, you can see that most of the sound is above this particular point. So I could set this to about here, but when it then reaches the final part of the sound where the pitch is much lower, we lose a lot of the low end. I can show you that. Listen. So now we start to lose that low end. See? And when you compare that to when I put it at about, let's see, 150, like that. We keep a lot more of that low end. So that's really useful and really helpful to keep that frequency intact, to keep the character intact over multiple different octaves. Now, am going to bring down the mids slightly, like that. Yep, that sounds pretty good. I'm also gonna add a auto filter to this. Now, why am I gonna do this? Because I want to be able to filter this. You know, I want to be able to filter the low frequencies out if I need to. So I'm gonna set this to a high pass. I'm going to set the frequency all the way down, but I'm also gonna turn off the actual auto filter. Why do I do this? I don't want to hear the auto filter taking effect. Right now, if I have it turned on, and at the moment it won't do that much, but when I've added a sub layer into this and I have this auto filter turned on, you can see that the bottom frequencies are still affected. And when you turn this off and only turn it on when you are applying the actual filter, then you will still keep that sub when you're not using it, and it will only affect the low frequencies a little bit as soon as you start filtering. And that is really useful. I hear that a lot in tunes. People just throw on an auto filter and they high pass it, but they forget that they also lose a lot of character in the sub, a lot of weight of the actual sub bass, because the auto filter, it's not going down to 0 Hertz, it's going down to 26 Hertz, but you can see that above that cutoff point there's still a lot of frequencies being affected, up to about, well, I think that's about 200 Hertz. while this is actually set at 26 Hertz. So that's really something you need to think about. If you add that auto filter to high pass your bass or a particular sound, then be sure to turn it off when you're not using it. Yeah, that's it for now, I think. I only need to add a little bit of sub bass to this. So I'm going to group the EQ8 and the massive. And I'm going to duplicate this chain. Like that. I'm gonna take off the EQ8. I'm going to modify this patch a little bit. The first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna turn off the tube. The dimension expander is gonna be turned off. The EQ is gonna be turned off. Parabolic shaper turned off. Feedback is gonna be turned off. And I'm gonna take off the LFO pitch modulation because I don't want that on my sub bass. That modulation is only used to add some character to the actual mid-range layer and not to the sub bass layer. I can also clear these macro knobs like that, and I'm going to change the waveform to a sine wave. Take this all the way to the left. Let's solo this and see how it sounds. It's pretty high now, so let's drop it down to -36, which creates that. Now, it's also going to give us a lot of bottom end at the start of the sound. But it's also going to lose that sub character the more it progresses through that particular pitch band. So to make up for that, I'm gonna add another sine wave that's gonna be 1 octave above that other sine wave. I'm gonna connect the envelope number 1 to the pitch as well, with the same rate going down, and I'm gonna turn the amp down just a little bit, so now we get a little bit more of a fuller sub bass that keeps that low frequencies a little bit longer during the pitch bend. So now it starts to fade out, you know, you're not really hearing the pitch anymore. But that now together with the other layer, or let's see, oh yeah, I need to set the voices to 1 and turn off the pen position. You know, we don't want stereo sub bass. So that layered with our main sound, sounds pretty good. I can take down the sub a little bit. Take down the mid a little bit as well. Sounds pretty good. We're not clipping. Now I'm gonna open up the macro controls, and I'm gonna set up a couple of different macro controls. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm gonna open up this little triangle, this little menu, and I'm gonna press configure. It's gonna open up massive, and I'm gonna basically just gonna move all 3 of these macro knobs that I've set up. Close down massive again, and now I've got these little macro knobs right here. I can right click them and map them to different macro knobs of the instrument rack. Like that. They will automatically get the name of the macro control inside massive, so that's really, really useful. There's one more thing that I need to do, and that is do the same for the sub bass. Now, if I want to automate that glide time, the sub bass contains the same glide settings and the same macro knob. So I'm going to open this up, this little triangle, press configure and move that glide time. close down massive, and map this to the same knob as this one. So now when I turn this glide, the glide settings are gonna change in both instances of massive. So we're gonna get the glide changing on the mid-range layer, but on the sub-layer as well, and they're gonna be exactly the same. That is really useful for keeping things in key when you're applying that glide automation when you want a little bit of a longer glide time on a particular note. That's it for the actual sound. Now I just need to add a little bit of automation to these knobs. First thing I'm gonna automate is the LFO amp. I want that to become more defined towards the end of the sound. So give it a little bit of a slope, do it like that. That creates gives it a little bit more character towards the end of the sound. And I'm gonna do the same for the LFO rate, but I'm gonna start that a little bit later, like that. Also gonna give this a slope as well. Make this slope a little bit more steep towards the end. Now we get this. So quite like that. It's a little bit, I can make it a little bit steeper. Great. That's it for today's video. Next week, I think I'm gonna do a longer session where I'm basically gonna construct, well, a basic first sketch of the drop. I've got a lot of different sounds now, and I think I've got enough to create a really interesting sounding drop. So this patch is going to be available at the ARTFX Studios website for download. You can basically just download the massive preset or the full instrument rack. Those downloads are going to be available to all VIP members of the website. That was it for this week's video. I want you to post a comment below and tell me what you want me to talk about in future videos. If you enjoyed these videos, then you can click the bottom. Now, if you enjoyed these videos, then please subscribe to this channel to see a lot more of these kind of videos in the upcoming future. And if you have any questions regarding this video or another video on my YouTube channel, then please tweet them to @ARTFX Studios. I'll try to keep up with all the questions, and I'm try to come back at you as soon as possible. Most of the time I respond within 24 hours, but sometimes when I'm really busy with work or other kinds of things, it might take a little bit longer, but I promise I'll get back at you within 2 days. If you want to talk about music, then please come to the ARTFX website, register for a free account, and you will get access to the forum. There's also a separate forum for the VIP members where they can actually get much more detailed feedback on their music. But for free members, you can also post your music in the Got Something to Show forum category, where both me and other users will give you some feedback that you can use to, well, basically develop your skills as a music producer. And as a producer myself, I've spent a lot of time on forums and sharing my music with other producers, and I found that watching tutorial videos is much less important than getting and understanding actual feedback from other producers. I found that feedback from other producers helped me much more than watching tutorial videos. So if you want to have some feedback, come to my website and post your music there. Be sure to give some feedback to other users as well, because that will significantly increase the chance that you will actually get some feedback in return. I hope you like this video, and I'll see you back next week.